Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for taking the time to join us for our 16th webinar in the Zeald series, Keep Calm and Get Digital. My name is Lisa, and I'll be your moderator for today's webinar. With everyone adjusting into Alert Level 2 and some pushing for Alert Level 1, things seem to be getting back to normal. Well, what is maybe better said as a new normal. While some have gone back to their old habits of shopping and being out and about, others are still hesitant to be around large crowds of people and ensuring that social distancing is kept at all times. Businesses that offer in-store and online solutions that help people feel at ease during their shopping experience will also no doubt be seeing a slow increase in their sales. And one thing that I know has been coming up in conversations with clients is that those businesses with an online presence, where not only someone can purchase online, but where people can quickly find information they need before quickly popping into the store, are seeing more positive interactions with their business. This highlights the importance of information being available easily for your customers, and also leads into today's topic, Google My Business, where we will take you through how to easily set up and manage this powerful tool, which can easily assist you in this area. Our speaker today, Jara Borman, is a known expert in the digital space and also in these webinars. Jara continues to be leading the charge with the ideas and solutions and essentially a way forward for clients in the current times. And I know today he will be providing a knowledgeable overview of Google My Business. Just quickly going over some housekeeping as well before we get into it. So if you haven't joined us before, this is Zoom for you. And if you can't hear us right now, there are the audio settings down below in the bottom left-hand corner, and you should be able to play around with those to make sure your speakers are working correctly or the right options are chosen. In terms of how do you ask a question, we do have a Q&A section at the end, but feel free to use the chat or the Q&A at the bottom toolbar to ask us questions throughout the webinar and also in the Q&A section. What is raise hand? If you want to ask a question, if you do raise your hand, we're able to actually enable your audio and you can ask us your question in the Q&A section at that point. And so, oh yeah, if you miss something, that's always the one I miss myself. If you do miss something, we do post these up on our YouTube channel, and we will also send a link out in an email afterwards, so you will be able to go back and get through any tips or just rewatch or share with people if you feel it will be helpful. So let me hand it across to Jara now, and I hope you enjoy today's webinar.
Cool, thanks very much, Lisa. Yeah, so today's topic is Google My Business. So this is an incredibly powerful free tool. I'm a little bit passionate about this. I think it's one of the most underutilized tools in the digital marketing toolbox at the moment. And so I think it's a great topic to cover today and try and help get you up to speed on what you can do with this tool and how to kind of get control of it and use it to your advantage. So what we're going to be covering today, just a little bit of background. What is Google My Business? Where did it come from? And what can it do for us today? How you suggest edits to the system if you don't have control of your Google My Business. How to update and claim that listing if you want to get some more real control over it. How you maybe go through setting up a new listing if you don't have one. What you should do on an ongoing basis to get the most out of a Google My Business listing. And some tips on how to optimize and rank your Google My Business, which is critical once it's set up, trying to get the most out of it. And then a little bit of detail on managing reviews. This is one of the primary places where you should be looking to get reviews and collect reviews is on your Google My Business. And so we'll talk a little bit about how to encourage those and how to manage them as they start to come through as well. All right. So first, what is Google My Business, right? So Google My Business is the name for the verified listings that Google has pinned to its Google Maps system. All right, this is a data set that's been evolving over a number of years. It was originally called Google Places because it was tied to maps. At a certain point, it got renamed to Google Plus as an attempt for Google to turn it into a social media enterprise. And it has since evolved into what's called Google My Business. And they are verified listings tied to maps, and they show up in some really critical places when people are searching for your business using the Google search engine. All right, they trigger in searches when people search for your brand. We'll show you how that shows up in a second. But also, if you can get them to show up in what's called the 3-pack, they can show up when people are looking for your product or service as well. And that is a really powerful thing to get engaged for your business. All right, they are incredibly important for helping people find directions to your business, for getting a phone number, because people can, as you see in this picture here, people can click to call directly out of the system if they're on their mobile phone, or they can find directions in Google Maps. And really importantly, it gives people a quick overview of your business with reviews and potentially even opening hours as well. And so people do rely on this information to determine whether or not they should come and even visit you. Many Google My Business listings currently have actually got really outdated information. And that is because that they were published through some early data sharing relationships that Google had with businesses like Finder.co.nz and also APN, which is now NZME, was the parent company for like the New Zealand Herald, so to speak. So some businesses actually paid for advertising with APN way back in the day and got maybe an ad on or a listing on the newspaper and found themselves getting published through to Google Maps without even knowing. And some of that data still exists on Google Maps today for some older businesses, and it's wildly out of date and needs to be updated. Last time I saw the research, only about 30 to 40% of New Zealand businesses had actually claimed their Google My Business listing and were actively managing it. So that's kind of the gap that we see in the market at the moment, and why it's so important that people understand what this tool is and how to start using it. And we'll give you some insight into that today. So where do I see a Google My Business listing? You'll see we can track this often to a GMB. It's a lot less of a mouthful than Google My Business every single time. So when you do a name search for a business, we've just used our company as an example. When you search for Zeald, you see this whole big box over here on the right-hand side. All of that information is not coming from the website. That is coming from the Google My Business listing. So what most people don't realize is that you have a lot of control over what shows here, and you do that through the Google My Business listing, not through any sort of website function itself. And so if you do a search on your own business name and this whole big space off to the side and on the right is blank, it's because you don't have this listing set up properly and linked to your website. So it's an incredibly powerful piece of real estate that you can use to control all sorts of things, and it publishes, as I said, addresses and opening hours and phone numbers and all those critical pieces of information that people will use to do business with you. Where it becomes really powerful is if you can get it to display when people do an industry or category search. So this is what we call a non-brand search term. So it'll be someone looking for a particular service or a particular category of product, and in this case, it's kitchens. And so we've done a search here for kitchens, and we've got an industry search, and we've got a number of different kitchens and restaurants that have shown up, and only the top 3 show in this list, and it's this kind of like a business discovery process. Now I can see that there are a number of options here for me, placed in different places throughout the country with some different star ratings and some images of their products as well, which is quite cool. And so that's, if you can get your Google My Business listing well optimized and triggering in that 3-pack and appearing in an industry search, then it's incredibly powerful because of where it's positioned on a Google search result page. All right, so those are the 2 places you'll see it. You'll also see it whenever you're interacting with Google Maps. All of the pins on Google Maps are all tied to those business listings as well. So yeah, that's the places you'll see it. The first way that you can adjust the data on a Google My Business listing is to actually just suggest an edit. So I've just shown you here, once you've opened up that listing, and maybe just showing to the right-hand side on a Google search result, you'll see this little suggest an edit button. Now, this traditionally was a really good way to get some edits made quickly and easily to a page that you didn't maybe control. And so you can suggest edits. They will go through a review process. And so if you don't have it claimed, this is the process that you need to follow if it's relatively urgent. So you can suggest a name change. Probably not an easy one to get done through a suggest an edit because it's very hard to verify. But you may be able to change your address, your location on the map quite easily. Editing opening hours is fairly straightforward, and you can also adjust the categories that you're listed under. Now, I'll go into that in a little bit more detail later, but the categories that you get listed under is quite critical to these systems to make sure that you're appearing on those industry searches that I talked about before. So these edits are then reviewed by Google or someone from the local guides community before being published. And it's worth noting that there's actually a really long wait time on these currently. They used to be reviewed very, very quickly, but one of the impacts of COVID-19 is that these reviews are taking quite a while to go through. And in my experience, sometimes they're not quite making it through at all. And so while this traditionally was a good way to get some edits done, I would recommend moving through into some of the other options that we have available. If it's urgent, do this as well. But yeah, as I said, this is not something that's tending to get reviewed and accepted very quickly at the moment. So the next step is to try and claim a listing. Obviously, if you've already got a listing claimed, it's a lot easier to make these edits, and we'll talk about that shortly. But these are for people that haven't necessarily got that listing claimed yet. And so if you want to get yourself a listing, you can actually go through and click the button that says that I manage this business, and you can make a statement here that you wish to manage it, and you go through a claiming process. All right. And so if you haven't done that and you don't have control of your page and you can see one listed online, then I highly recommend that you kind of pretty much straight away go out and try and start getting ownership of this listing. The quicker you have it under control, the easier it is for you to manage. Now, there's a verification process that you will need to go through when you try and claim your listing. It can be a little arduous, and so if you can try and verify by phone call, if the phone number that's listed on the listing is correct, you can sometimes be given the option to verify by phone call. That's very quick because someone will give you a call and you can verify it. Or it may be a bot that actually does it or you may need to verify it by postcard, which can be a little bit tricky. This is a similar process to how you'll set up a new listing. And so when you set up the listing, Google will want to verify that you're at that location. Ultimately, what Google's trying to do here is get the very best possible information onto its mapping service. And so it doesn't just publish listings willy-nilly, it publishes listings that it can verify the information in some way, shape, or form. And their standard practice is to send out a postcode with a code on it that you can then use once you're logged in to your Google My Business to verify that you are at that location. So sometimes that can take a couple of weeks for the postcard to get out. So you do need to be aware and keep an eye out for the mail, because there is only that code is only available or functional for a certain period of time. And if you get to it too late and it's expired, you have to start again. So it can be a little bit of a challenge to get ownership. That may be why the ownership rates are quite low, but it is worth your while persevering and getting control of it. If someone manages the listing already, you'll need to go through a recovery process. So if someone's already claimed that listing and it's tied to their Google account and you try to claim it, it'll let you know that it's already claimed, and there is a different process again for you to get ownership of it. This is actually incredibly common. What will happen is that sometime in the past, maybe a staff member has set one of these up for you and they've subsequently left the business, but they still have the ownership of the listing tied to their account. And so what you can do is you can go through this request ownership process, and it essentially alerts that person and asks them to provide ownership to you. It may seem a little daunting, but it is a fairly straightforward process, and I've helped a few clients through this as well. But yeah, just be aware that you may need to go through that process if it's already been claimed by another person and under ownership. The great thing about Google services like this is if you ever get stuck, you can actually just Google, go to Google and ask a question of Google about how you do a certain process, and there'll be a guide there somewhere for you. Google services are phenomenal in that regard. Those help guides are available straight through Google's search engine as well. So if you don't have a listing, it's not there, you don't need to go through a claiming process or recovery process, then you want to set up a brand new listing. And so that's a little bit more straightforward, but you will still need to go through the verification process. And so as I said before, just Google how to set up Google My Business, and you'll be taken straight through to the right place and you can get started. You'll get that postcard sent out to you with a code that you can enter, and that should get you going. Right. Now, you do need to ensure that your categories are right. There are nearly 3,000 categories to pick from, and you can have up to 10 categories assigned to your listing. Now, these categories are what allow you to show in those industry or category searches that I talked about before. So while you can write custom categories, all right, it is better to align with the categories that Google has set, because Google will trigger the 3-pack when people search for those categories. And so if you work really closely on those categories, you are far more likely to get what's called non-brand search triggering your listing, and therefore more new customers that are not aware of you and are not searching for you by name coming through to your listing and potentially becoming customers. And so not everyone can have up to all 10 categories, but it's worth taking the time to review all the different options and set as many as you possibly can. One thing that's quite good to do if you're unsure how to start is look at other similar businesses and how they've structured their Google My Business. They may have some categories assigned that you hadn't thought of that are actually highly relevant for you. And so that's a good way to maybe build up a category list as well. So here's an expert tip for you. The ownership of Google My Business is actually tied to an email address and a Google account. It's not, you don't have a set login specifically for Google My Business. You will have a Google general login through an email address that then has access to, or ownership of that Google My Business listing assigned to it. All right, that's a critical thing, because what you don't want to do is have ownership of this essentially listing tied to just one individual person. So what my pro tip is here, because that person may leave the business, is that you actually set up a generic company Gmail account, something like whatever your business is at gmail.com, and then have ownership assigned to that as a backup, and keep the credentials for that account on file so that anyone at any time can pick that up, have access to the Google My Business listing, and then assign ownership or management rights to individual staff members who are looking after it for you. It's a really good way to do it, provides a bit of redundancy within your ownership structure of that Google My Business listing, and it ensures that you don't have a point of failure if someone loses, if someone leaves, or so on. You don't have to go through that recovery process again. And unfortunately, that recovery process is very, very common for people that haven't put a good management plan in place for how the ownership of their Google My Business is managed. So this is my pro tip here, just to get that assigned to a second account, as well as perhaps your own, and whichever staff member is looking after the listing. So now let's get to managing that listing, right? So once you're logged into the Google My Business console, you'll be able to go into the home section, and there are a heap of different things that you can do to fill out your listing. Great thing is Google kind of gamifies it a little bit and lets you know how complete your listing is through some good visuals. And so it will guide you which areas need to be filled out, right? The critical ones, the critical ones will be guided for you by Google, but you really want to make sure that your opening hours are accurate, right? This information publishes straight through into Google search results. And so if someone's looking for you and does a search on your name, and you've got your opening hours incorrect, it may tell them that you're not open when you are, and you lose a really good opportunity to win some business. I actually worked with a local cafe here in Tauranga called Dry Dock down on Wolf Street a couple of years ago, helped them recover their Google My Business listing. And the reason they wanted to do that is that they'd started opening on the weekends, and their Google My Business listing said that they were only open Monday to Friday. So we helped them through that recovery process, and then was able to update their opening hours to say they were open on a Saturday. And the feedback I got from Sandra, the owner there, was that they had a 50% increase in patronage the weekend following the update of that information. So it's used, it's critical, it has an impact on customers' perception of whether or not you're open. So I highly recommend that you use that information and keep it up to date. All right. You also get prompts occasionally just to make sure your public holiday opening hours are updated as well. And that's good practice too. You also will have the opportunity to post to your Google My Business. And so you're able to post photos and all sorts of things. This is really critical. The more information and content that you push through into the Google My Business listing, the more active it's seen and the more likely it is to get ranking, which we'll cover shortly. You can add pictures to your listing as well, so potential customers can see what sort of products you have, what sort of service you might have, and what it's like to work with you. And in fact, you can actually post individual products to the listing as well. And I work with one client who's had some phenomenal success out of posting actual products that they sell to their Google My Business listing, and people are clicking on those and going through to their website to buy. Now, here's my expert tip for managing your listing, right? There is a phenomenal app for Google My Business. And if you sign into that and manage your Google My Business listing through that app, it is a lot easier than trying to do it other ways. And it also allows you to just post pictures and things very easily through to it. It's a fantastic tool. It's absolutely free, and it is available on the Play Store or the Apple Store as well. Okay. Here we go. So once you've got that basics set up, you'll have your listing show whenever people do a name search, which is great. You've got that covered pretty much straight away with everything we've talked about previously. But from here, we really want to try and get your listing to appear in this 3-pack, right? So when you do a dentist search, or so any kind of search, and put a location on it, sometimes even when you don't have the location, but Google's determined you're probably looking for something local, then it will trigger the 3-pack here. Where this appears is directly under the Google Ads. So this has got a prime spot in a Google search result. You've got your Google Ads before this, then you've got your Google My Business listings, and only then do you start to see websites appearing naturally, all right, or organically. All right, so these 3 listings here get a huge amount of traffic just by having this position. Okay, so we want to have to talk through some of the tips that you can do to try and increase the ranking of your Google My Business listing. Right, because that goal is the top 3. Right, so first one is get reviews. You'll notice here every single one of the listings has got at least 1 review. That one's maybe not the greatest review, but you know, there's this one here's got 7 and this one's got about 25. So there's a lot of activity going on these listings, and so reviews are a key indicator as to whether or not this business is active, if people are going to use it, and if it's a good one for Google to show within that 3-pack. In fact, it's one of the most critical factors in getting ranking. So ensuring your listing is complete is really high there. If Google's saying you're only 80% complete on your listing, then it's going to really hold back your ability to rank in this 3-pack. You want to post regular content. My rule of thumb here is maybe once per week, and that'll help you get the most out of this particular listing. The great thing is that there are not a lot of people that are using this tool as well as they could be. And so if you were able to even just post a picture with a comment once per week through to this listing page, you'd see that your activity would far outstrip a lot of your competitors, and it would give you a really good opportunity to get into this 3-pack. All right. Ensure photos uploaded are geotagged with your location, because once again, this is a location-based service. So if in this case, I've done dentist Tauranga, you'll see that everything is in a fairly close proximity to Tauranga. If I was I'm not sure if everyone here knows the Tauranga region, but if I was out in Te Puke, for example, which is outside of Tauranga, and I was a dentist, I would struggle to show up in this Tauranga dentist search because I'm not located directly where that search is happening. So because of that, if your photos are geotagged to show that you're in that location, then that will help reinforce things with Google's algorithm and help you to get that ranking that you want. So to do that, you just need to turn on location tagging on your phone camera. It's pretty much a default function with most phones, but you may need to turn it on. People can ask questions too through this system, and if you've got that Google My Business app, then those questions will pop up very quickly, and you have a nice easy function to answer them. Answering them as quickly as you can is critical. This is a great way to show that you're engaged with your listing, you're engaged with your customers, and it's a ranking factor. All right. On top of this, you want to get your name, address, and phone number added to as many directory sites or other locations as possible. These are called citations, name, address, and phone number. So the number of times that your name, address, and phone number shows up around the internet is another ranking factor for your Google My Business listing. So try and get listed in lots of other different directory sites. It will help push this one up. I would consider this Google My Business system is fairly similar to a directory site, probably more important than directory sites themselves, but they help get that ranking as well. So go out there and get listed on Finder and Yellow and White Pages and all sorts of different things. Just those free listings from those systems is pretty helpful, and that will help with the performance of your Google My Business. One thing that's worth noting here is that your website needs to be optimized for search. Your Google My Business can't rank on its own. It's intrinsically tied to your website. So your website needs to have at least a base level of search engine optimization. So here's a couple of tips and things that you need to think about. You need to ensure that your website loads quickly. You need to have a page for all of your key products and services. Trying to stuff them all into one page is not a great user experience. Google doesn't tend to like that as much, so make sure you've got pages for those products and services. Ensure that your website has a security certificate. Make sure your site is mobile responsive and works well on all different screen sizes. And then optimize your content and metadata for important keywords. If you'd like to learn a little bit more about the basics of SEO, then do so through our earlier webinar on this topic. You can find that on YouTube, just search for Zeald. And then we get to the last bit, and this is certainly last but not least, it is one of the most critical pieces here, and that is managing reviews. I touched on this previously, but this is one of the key things that you can do to get your ranking improved. And people often ask, how do I get reviews? Well, the simple fact is you ask for them, all right? And so you make sure that you have a really robust process for asking for reviews when you've provided good service as part of your post-sales process. So happy customers are often quite happy to go and say so in this sort of environment, but they often don't think to do so after they've made a purchase. And so they do need a little bit of prompting to get some good positive feedback. You need to have a really robust comms strategy around this. Yeah, and so you need to just be asking people. You can automate this process. So if you've got a lot of purchases online, you can use some tools like reviews.io, which help you collect reviews and then syndicate them through to the Google My Business page. We can help you with that sort of automation if you'd like, but that's something that you need to do when you're trying to get reviews at scale. You've got a lot of sales going on, and I would suggest starting out with just asking people, maybe templating an email that you send out to people that invites them to review, and then provide a link through to your Google My Business page. That's generally the best way to do it, but you can also do it at scale with some of these tools as well. When reviews are posted, respond to them all. All right. So even if it's a good review, thank them for their good review and passing on their feedback. And if it's a negative review, do respond to that in a professional way and encourage them to get in touch directly to discuss their concerns. It's important not to get into kind of a bit of a discussion or an argument in the space. Not that you can do too much of that within Google My Business, but it is far better to just respond professionally to any negative reviews and just encourage them to get in touch. People will note the professionalism with which you respond to negative feedback, and that can actually be turned into a positive if you do it really well. So my last expert tip is that you should really get started using this tool today if you haven't already, and it's one of the, as I said right up front, it's one of the most powerful tools that you can use. And here's my pro tip: it's Queen's birthday weekend coming up. You could if you've got it under control, you could update your opening hours for Monday and let people know whether or not you're open. So that's me.
Awesome, thanks for that, Joe. As it says on the screen now, so we head into our Q&A section. And while you were talking, we did receive a question from Robin, who I know attends quite a few of our webinars, I should say. So thanks for popping along today, Robin, as well. So where and what is increased my traffic? She's had a phone call from someone at Google offering this service.
Oh, cool. Thanks for asking that, Robin, and nice to have you coming back to our webinars. So there are a number of different firms out there that will try and call you and say that they're ringing from Google. Sometimes they're affiliates and they have some relationship with Google, but often they also have nothing to do with Google at all. And so as you become more popular online, especially as you maybe start to run AdWords, or you've launched a new website, or you've got your Google My Business set up, you will start to attract calls from all sorts of different firms. Often they'll try and tell you that the sky is falling, all right, and that there's something terribly wrong with your website, and if you don't jump on board with them, then no one's ever going to be able to find you, and they try to create a lot of anxiety around that, and they'll not necessarily, they'll stretch the truth quite a lot. That's actually quite normal. There's a lot of those sort of firms out there that are international firms like that, and they tend to try. It's a bit. I'm not saying that person specifically was trying to scam you necessarily, but it is a little bit dodgy. And so I look at it as being they had to find you some way, right? And so you must be doing something right to be getting those sort of calls. And what I would suggest is that you just take it as a compliment. Someone's found you, and perhaps the better you do and the further you go in your digital marketing, you might actually get more and more of those calls or emails. And that's a trend that I see with a lot of clients that I work with, is as they start to get better and do more, they start to just attract more and more of that sort of approach.
Yeah, no, I do think that's very true, and no one's really immune from that, and it's just like other services, you know, you might start getting people calling you about who does your telephone number, you know, can we offer you a better internet service?
Mm-hmm.
And I think on the other side of that, it is quite funny because quite often I receive emails from people going, let's do your SEO for the Zeald website, and I'm sitting there going, have you even looked at what we do here? So it is quite funny that you will just have people reaching out to you, and you know, it's just another, you know, business technique, and everyone does it really in general. So you know, that's how people interact and network and talk to each other. So it is part of really what does happen, especially once you've got a website.
Yeah, I've had the same myself. I've actually had people, yeah, can I help you with your SEO? I think so. I think I'll be all right.
Yeah, no, it's surprising what comes up sometimes. So another question just around Google My Business, is it something that you have to keep sort of updating all the time, similar to how maybe you would update your website quite often?
Yeah, so it is really important that you've got your business described very accurately in the first instance, because it's going to be your first impression with a lot of businesses. You don't necessarily need to keep rewriting that and changing that part of the content or your base listing, but having some activity on there is really important. And so posting pictures is a really simple way to keep that activity going. And you can't just post like a logo or things like that. You want to post a picture of a product or of a service or something like that that shows that there's a reflection of what it would be like to do business with you. And so that sort of thing is really powerful and something you really should work into your weekly kind of program or and so on. So that would be my recommendation. Yes, you do need to keep it kind of refreshed and have content being posted to it, but you don't need to necessarily rework it. Yeah.
Awesome to hear. Oh, we've just had another person come through just asking what they mean, what increase my traffic.
Oh, so that was yeah. So Increase My Traffic is a firm that cold calls different businesses and tries to get them to sign up for potentially Google services and things like that. Sorry, I probably should have explained that a little bit better when we were answering that question, but I'd happen to know what Increase My Traffic was and probably just jumped to the answer there a little bit. Yeah, so. Cool.
Oh, awesome. Thanks. Well, thanks for raising that so we could clarify there.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Yeah, no, another thing as well, I know you mentioned sort of asking for reviews, but what else could I sort of do? You know, I maybe I have asked for reviews and it's not quite working. Are there other ways that I could be looking to get reviews on my Google My Business?
Yeah, so there's some fantastic automated tools. There's actually a whole lot of them out there. What you want to, some of them are quite expensive though, and so there are a few that are registered and approved to work with Google, and it's verified data. So there's not just any old firm is going to be able to gather reviews for you and publish them through into that system. You're going to need to look for those that have got a kind of an authorized Google relationship. And so we've researched a number of these, and there are some very, very expensive ones out there that do a really good job, but are designed for maybe big retailers and so on who are trying to collect reviews at scale. We have found one that's really reasonable, and it's called reviews.io. And so we've deployed that for some businesses that we work with. It is a really good tool that can be kind of automated, and you can put in email lists and potentially even integrate that with your website so that as someone purchases, it picks up that user's data and then sends out a request to them saying, hey, would you like to review? And just takes away a lot of that manual process or that having to ask. So there are options around that we can do. Requires a bit of customization and a bit of work, and there is obviously a fee for those services as well. But it can be a really good way to go if you haven't got the time to do it, and you've got maybe a bit of scale. You've got a number of sales per week that you could use that system for.
Okay, great to know. Now we've had Carl pop through with a question, which I think is in relation to actually updating or keeping your Google My Business updated. He's sort of gone, is there a specific day or time of day that works best?
I'm going to be honest, I haven't seen any research which shows when is a good time to post. Almost everything I've read is around just the frequency of it. So what you're dealing with here is an algorithm, essentially. So you're dealing with Google's search algorithm, and what it's doing is it's just constantly collecting data, and it's kind of almost giving you a weighting or a ranking, right? Well, not kind of, it is, right? And then it ranks you with all the other businesses. So it's more like a cumulative effort here that you've got going on. It's not that you're posting something to try and get at a particular time to get a particular reaction. It's just having a regular process and building up a range of content on your listing over time, so that you're seen as being authoritative, and you essentially have more content and more answers, and you're seen as a better answer to a search query than any other business. So that's the primary reason behind the posting. And it's not that you're trying to reach people that are searching at a particular time. So I wouldn't say there's a specific time to it. I'd just say it's getting at that practice and building up that cumulative weight of posts on your Google My Business listing is what we're trying to work through here. So I'd say just the frequency is more important than the timing.
And I think, Facebook and LinkedIn, it's all time stamped when you do post things. And I think for those platforms, it's probably a bit more time sensitive as to when you post certain items. Like I know something we were talking about with LinkedIn yesterday.
Yes.
It's kind of good to post early morning. And that's probably when you're going to get most views. Whereas, Facebook, I know when I've worked on certain things outside of the company, but outside of Zeald, but on other things, I know it's been good to sort of post if I was selling something in the Facebook group, sort of around 6 or 8 p.m. at night. So obviously in the time people are starting to have downtime or waiting for dinner to cook, or, you know, just sort of wrapped up with dinner. So I guess those platforms are more time sensitive as to when you should be posting.
Yeah, those platforms are more what we call stimulative, and so what you're trying to do there is you're trying to reach people when they're in a time they're engaged, give them a message to promote your products and try and stimulate their awareness of your product and try and create some demand. Whereas Google My Business is what we'd call a directive medium, and so it's when people are actively looking for your product or service, they're doing a search on Google or a search on Google Maps looking for products and services like yours, and so it's not that there's going to be a specific peak time that you want to be trying to match there. It's just you just need to have that weight of content behind you to be able to be seen as one of the best answers.
Awesome. And just a quick comment from Mark Jennings. He went on and was able to search his business and find it. So
he was awesome.
To hear.
Nice work.
Yes. Just another question that I do have at this point in time. So obviously there's a physical address and sort of store hours. What happens if I actually don't have a storefront, or, you know, my business doesn't have somewhere people can go? Is there that option to post on, still have a Google My Business listing?
There is, but it is more of a traditional Google Places listing, right? And you can actually set one up and put servicing addresses. So that'll help when people are doing a name search. It will help you control what shows on the right-hand side, but without putting like a flag on the map and saying I'm at this address, you probably won't be able to show up in those category searches. So you won't be able to appear in the 3-pack unless you actually have a location, right? And so proximity to where someone's searched, so Tauranga was my example. The closer you are to the centre of Tauranga, the more likely you are to show up in that 3-pack. That's a big ranking factor. So if you can't say, hey, I'm at this address, then you're not going to show up on those non-brand search terms, but you will still be able to set one up with a servicing area, and you will be able to have that show up on the right-hand side of your name search next to your website. So it's still a good thing to do, but just be aware that you just don't put the physical address down and you just put a servicing area, and that'll help, but not for all search types.
Okay, awesome. Well, just having a double check, and seems to be no further questions from our viewees today. So I will look into wrapping up the webinar at this point. Zeald overview. So well, I mean, right now, if we recap, COVID-19 has started becoming less prominent in the news. I noticed yesterday I actually went on to NZ Herald, when I normally do after workday, and I couldn't actually find a daily update. Which is normally the first article I can click on. So yeah, no, I think we're starting to see a change, and the focus is now more on what's actually happening in New Zealand because of the lockdown levels. So that sort of search for information has vastly changed. So if we do look at what we talked about today, what we do know is customers are liking to be able to find information easily, whether they're out and about or at home. The less looking they have to do, the better for them, really. And so what the opportunity is that businesses with information in more places than one online obviously give themselves more opportunity to be seen and found easily. A prediction is with Google My Business that a number of features and the prominence of Google My Business will only evolve over time. So, you know, the importance of having it now will just grow in the future. And obviously some of those rankings would have already started taking place, that it does, I guess, your website leverages off for search engine optimization. Shouldn't call it just SEO. And so my recommendation for today is, you know, utilize the free tools available to you, and give your business the best to adapt, the best chance to adapt into the digital world. So, you know, Google My Business is one of them. There are other features. So Stuff has Neighbourly, which is a similar sort of listing, and there is a free one. There is a paid one as well, but there are free ones. So there are some tools out there that will let you use them for free and will help your online and digital business, really. So before I do hand it over to Jara, I would just like to take the chance to say thank you for coming on today and taking us through your presentation. I know it was very informative, and we've had a lot of people from the viewees send through their appreciation and thanks for the information you've provided today. So that's awesome.
Okay. My pleasure. So yeah, let's just wrap up a little bit here. But one thing I'd like to mention before I do is that Google My Business is a Google tool, right? So Google's put a lot of work into it. They're going to keep adding features. They're going to keep growing it. I can see it becoming more and more important as time goes on. And I've actually seen that kind of unfold over the last 5 years. It's gone from being a sometimes thing that shows up into Google search results into an almost always. So it's pretty powerful. Right. When it comes to, yeah, sorry, did you have something?
I was just going to say, and I know for some larger businesses, I know like I used it to actually work out when I went to the supermarket, because it does, you know, one of the features it has one for certain businesses, and once you have if you have a lot of foot traffic, is it actually shows you your peak times. And,
Yes.
and shows me as a user, oh, it's quite busy right now. I won't go there just yet. And so not only I guess the supermarket, but sometimes use that for restaurants as well and cafes. So yeah, that's just another tool that it does have in there.
Yes, so Google's collecting a huge amount of data about people, how much they're moving. I think we've seen that in some of the movement data that Google's published around lockdown, just to show how effective lockdown's been. And that data that they're collecting about businesses and movement and everything, they're kind of projecting that out through this Google My Business system. So, you know, another way would be just you can click the directions button on a listing and it will tell you how long it's going to take there, and it will take into account traffic based on how many people are sitting in the car with their phone, not moving anywhere, and that's how they pick up a lot of that data. So it's incredible what's going on there, and this is how you can kind of take advantage of that by getting that claimed. So look, we can help you with this. This is something that we've been helping businesses with alongside the rest of our services for nearly 20 years. So the work that we do has been made even more important because of the COVID-19 crisis, and it's forced us to adopt digital technology at a rate faster than ever. It's not something that wasn't going to happen. Probably something that would have happened naturally over 5 to 10 years has now been forced on a lot of businesses, and said, look, you need to do this in weeks or months. All right, and so that's pretty daunting for a lot of people. So if you need help with your Google My Business listing or your SEO and search engine optimization in general, please let us know. If you'd like a free strategy session, you can say so in the feedback form that we'll send you out a little bit later on today. Zeald also wants to help as many Kiwi businesses as possible get through this and survive and perhaps thrive in this new world. So we've launched our Get E-commerce Movement version 2. Applications are open to apply for a free e-commerce website setup. The offer also comes with a 12-month zero-rated hosting arrangement, with the only charge being a 2% success fee. So it's no risk for you, and there's no fee if there's no success. So that's pretty powerful. It helps de-risk that process of getting online for a lot of businesses, and that is available right now. If you know anyone that wants to set up for online selling, get them to register at zeald.com for that initiative. Our next webinar is on Wednesday, the 3rd of June, at our Digital Marketing Roundtable session. So this is a little bit different. We're going to get you to guide the discussion with your questions. So you can submit them in advance by sending them to webinar@zeald.com, or just register, join us on the day and ask them live. We're going to have an expert team assembled, and we look forward to seeing you then. A special thanks to Lisa, our moderator today. Fantastic as always. And that is all the time we have for folks. If you know anyone that might benefit from attending these in the future, please feel free to share the details and get them to register at zeald.com. Wish you a good day and good luck.